Oh, goody.
Alright, what's up everybody? Zombies here again, and today we're back with another Mercenaries video. In this one, I recently did a top 5 buffs I would like to see to Mercenaries, so I thought it'd be fitting to also do top 5 nerfs. And this one is going to be a lot shorter and straight to the point because there's a lot less to think about when it comes to nerfs, and I've had a lot of time to think about a lot of these nerfs, so we're just going to dive right on into it. Before we do, if you enjoy this type of content, do remember to like and subscribe. It does a ton to help out the channel and keeps the Mercenaries videos coming. Yeah, let's dive right on into the top 5 Mercenaries I would like to see nerfed and how I would like to see them nerfed. So, Valerie, number 1. They keep buffing stuff to kind of make Valerie less oppressive, and I don't really think that's the way to do it. I think it would be a lot simpler just to nerf her. And there are 2 possible avenues to go about nerfing Valerie. The easiest, simplest one, and I think would probably be the best for the game health in the long term, would be cut this in half. Make this your friendly characters are 2 speed faster instead of 4. Even 3 speed I would take over 4, but I think if you really want to balance for the long term, it's a lot healthier to just be kind of a slight nudge up in speed of 2 speed, just because of how easy it is to get her in stealth and keep her in stealth. I think it's a lot better for this to be a lower amount of speed. 3 would be okay, but I think 2 really would be the way to go for this character. That's the one I like the most in terms of how I would change Valerie. But if they wanted to leave this for some crazy reason, there is another option, I think, and that would be just lowering the damage potential and Valerie's ability to kind of snipe things past taunt. So leave ambush alone, leave fan of knives alone, but sinister strike, if you're not going to touch her speed, this is what should be hit as like kind of a backup option. I don't understand why this gives 10 attack. Like, Valerie would still deal a lot of damage even if this only gave 5 or no attack. And I think that would be a fair trade-off for the fact that you can just dodge taunt effectively. Yes, sometimes this is a downside, but for the most part, it's almost always an upside. And it's just too good at sniping stuff down, and it really lessens taunt as a kind of way to protect your characters when Valerie can just get right on around it super easily. So either lower the attack on this or just make it so this ability can no longer bypass taunt. It can still attack the lowest health enemy, but like some other abilities, if there's a taunt in the way, it should hit that taunt. So if you're not going to touch your speed, I do think Sinister Strike, less damage, or not being able to dodge taunt is the way to go about it. But again, Unnatural Smoke nerf to 2 or 3 speed instead of 4 would go a long way to making Valerie a bit more balanced of a character. Gore. We had a whole video about this a little while ago. There are quite a few options for Gore. They're all pretty simple for the most part. 1, don't let the backlash attack be permanent. It lets Gore snowball way, way too hard, and it's just kind of ridiculous. I don't think that's the best way to do it, but it's one possible way. Another thing, they're all about backlash, basically. Backlash is the broken ability. So either limit basically the amount of triggers this can get. So let's say 2 triggers or even 3 triggers a turn. That could be it. Just like not letting it trigger every single time. A solution I really like, one of my favorites, is don't let the residual damage from attacking in trigger this. I think that is really, really silly, the fact that it works this way, because it's backlash. It's supposed to be defensive, not offensive. And I think that's like, he's a protector. It just doesn't really make sense to me. So that's probably my favorite change for something like this, would just be, yes, it can still be good, and it can still basically be used as a defensive thing, but you can't use it as offensively, and then that would mean you actually would have a reason to attack in with his regular attack. So that's the change I like. Another change I think would also just go a long way. Leave the ability as is, give it a 1 cooldown. All of a sudden, Gore cannot be used as this insane lead that snowballs the game like crazy, and you can't just press backlash every turn and get crazy damage for free at 1 speed. So that's another change. I do think that would hurt him a lot more, but then maybe, again, gives a reason to use his other abilities. I do think if you do change that, I wouldn't mind them maybe buffing up something like regrow heads or even his regular attack a little bit. Though I think the regular attack is mostly fine. Maybe it could be a little bit faster, but whatever. But this is about nerfs, not buffs, and backlash is what has to go. So either limit the amount of times this can trigger, don't trigger on residual damage, or just make it so it has one cooldown. Those are, I think, the best solutions for fixing this problem. I'd also like to see it not trigger if you're killing Trigor, kind of like we see with Long Jin, or if you kill Long Jin's ability, basically where it takes damage and it blasts you back for it, that doesn't trigger when it dies. I do not think Trigor's backlash should trigger when AoE hits the whole board and Trigor dies. That'd be another change I'd like to see as well. Yeah, it's Trigor. And then moving on to a Localar. Localar, I think really the vast majority of his abilities are fine. The only thing that really could use some touching here is Frigid Winds. This ability is way too strong. And I think there are two simple ways you can go about fixing this that make it much more balanced and just better for the long-term health of the game, especially if they're going to continue to make more Frost units, which I'm sure they are. So, Frigid Winds, either cut this in half. After an enemy acts, gain +2 Frost damage until the end of turn. Or, if you want to leave it with high Frost damage, it should only affect Localar and not the rest of the team. The fact that this also just gives free buffs to your Jaina's and your Vardens and your Belindas is just actually absurd. And it would already be insane as it is if it only affected Localar. So those are really the only two changes I would like to see to Localar. Either cut the damage for the Frost in half, or leave it as it is, but make it only affect Localar rather than all of your Frost units. Then we have Volgen. So for Volgen, again, this is another one that I think is pretty simple. I think the vast majority of Volgen's kit is fine for the most part. I think the only thing that should be adjusted, much like with Valerie, is the speed. I think now that we have so many good shadow units, I think 3 is just a bit too much for Volgen. Maybe it would be more reasonable at 2. I think putting it to 1 would kind of gut the ability. I think 1 is just too slow. But if we saw other changes that lowered like the speed of a lot of the prevalent speed stuff like Valerie, I think that would be fine, like balancing it out with that at the same time. But yeah, I think just knocking 1 speed off this might be enough for it to just be still good, still playable, but not quite as insane as it currently is. Maybe if you adjust a lot of other speed stuff, you could tone it down more, but that would require many more than I think just the 5 nerfs that we're talking about in this video. So overall, just knock 1 speed off of it, and I think Volgen is in a bit more reasonable of a place, given how many different shadow units we have at the current moment. And then last but not least, we have Sylvanas here. Sylvanas, I do think she's mostly fine as a character, but the big problem, Sylvanas is kind of the new Sinestra, in that she makes a lot of really weird and awkward ties, and I think is kind of limiting the metagame because of Death Volley here, the Death Rattle, where you deal damage equal to this Merc's attack to all enemies. This is insanely strong now that Reclaimed Souls can basically just buff her up to 40 or 50 attack. It insta-kills pretty much any blue in the game and it deals most of a Merc's health to even non-critical damage. So I think it's just too strong in its current form now that we have a bunch of ways like Kazakus that summon a bunch of summons amongst other units. And I don't think you need to change Reclaimed Souls. I think all her abilities are fine, actually. It's just all you would have to do, I think, to make Sylvanas a bit more reasonable and have a bit more counterplay to where she's not like an instant win at the end or an instant tie, because the ties do get kind of annoying. And unlike Sinestra, these aren't ties that can be remedied by the new fatigue system. So I think the best way to go about doing this would be cut this in half. Make it deal half the damage of Sylvanas' attack to all enemies. that would be a relatively simple change. It still, I think, would be playable, but it wouldn't be this kind of instant I win or instant I tie when Sylvanas dies. And I think that would definitely help the overall metagame quite a bit. And maybe it lets some of her other equipment see play, as these two just see no play, not because they're bad items, but because this one is just so much incredibly better than the rest of them. So yeah, those are the 5 characters, the top 5 Mercenaries characters I would nerf for PvP and how I would nerf them. Definitely curious to hear what you think about this, though. Let me know in the comments below. Do you agree with these 5 characters being kind of the 5 most important ones to nerf? Do you like the ideas I have for nerfing them? Do you have different ideas, or do you think different characters should also be nerfed on top of this or instead of some of these? Let me know in the comments below. But that is going to wrap it up for this video. If you enjoyed it, do remember to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.